Your neighbor tells you about the unstable man in the cul-de-sac who claims to have been abducted by aliens. And then there's the woman in town who claims to see Bigfoot all the time. Your boss, who you greatly admire, confides in you that he has started speaking with his wife daily when he gets home from work. She died 8 years ago. It's hard to believe this stuff, and you write these stories off as overactive imaginations. Are these people seeking attention, or are they a bit unstable? No matter what you think, if you're like me, you walk away wondering, what if that was true? The What If It's True podcast features stories by ordinary people like you and me. Something has happened to them, something so strange they are in agony unless they tell others. My name is Cameron Buckner, and the What If It's True podcast is available at whatifitstruepodcast.com and on all available podcast apps.
Welcome to Beast TV. What was that? You better get a fresh dip and buckle up. Welcome to Beast TV, and we want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight, and we especially want to thank everyone that's come into our chat room. We already have over 100 people in our chat room, and they are having a big time, Larry Porch.
That's unbelievable. They're always doing something.
You know, tonight, it's really exciting to have a guest on that has mentored so many people over the years. And that's what we're looking for. Is we're looking for mentors and people that are willing. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's great to see you again, and we have followed you over the years and everything that you have done, and you have done some great things. But before we get started, why don't you just tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, sure. I live in Georgia, about an hour northeast of Atlanta. I grew up outside of Atlanta in the suburbs, and I was lucky enough to be so far out that I had the woods in the back of my house. The woods were my playground. So I was also one of the only girls on the street. So I had a lot of little boyfriends, and we would play war and build forts. And I grew up in a time where we could be gone all day as long as we were back when the street lights came on. The woods are just a really fun place for me, a place where I feel relaxed and at home. And so since childhood, hanging out in the woods is just a fun place for me. As I grew up, I went to the University of Georgia, and I actually studied music. I'm a violinist, and I was a music teacher for a time. And as the birth of social media started and YouTube and all that, and I learned how all those kind of things worked. I was in a couple of different business ventures and got really proficient at it. And so I eventually started my own business doing content marketing, social media management, email marketing, web design, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I do now. I'm self-employed and do my own thing, so I can set my own hours and work when I want to work and be in the woods when I want to be in the woods. And so I feel very fortunate, very blessed that I can do that. I guess that's the short version. Is there anything else specifically you wanted me to say?
Well, I know the woods of northern Georgia are awesome. So we've been there a few times, and that is a fantastic place. But tell us how you got interested. I hear your father got you into the subject.
Yeah, he did. When I was a little girl, he had a book, and I believe it was a Reader's Digest book about strange and amazing facts. And the Patterson Gimlin famous picture of that creature was in the book. And I was always fascinated by that creature, and so was my father. And if there was any kind of program on TV about Bigfoot, I would always watch it with him. He always talked about Bigfoot, and we are a musical family. He played guitar, so he would make up songs about Bigfoot. We would sing songs about Bigfoot as little kids, and so it was just a thing that we did, just an interest. As I was growing up, it was just this abstract thing that was interesting to talk about and unknown, but beyond that, we didn't really talk about it. And then later, as I grew up, and the year that we lost my mom, my dad came to me. We lost her in the summer of 2014, and I'm sorry, 2004. And my dad came to me that fall and said, I've taken my interest in Bigfoot to the World Wide Web. It was kind of a new thing back then. And he said, I have found this organization. It's called the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, and they teach you how to look for Bigfoot. And he goes, they do it all over the country. They put on these expeditions all over the country. And he said, and I said, well, Dad, that sounds great. That sounds like something right up your alley. I know Mom would want you to pursue that. That would be so cool. And so he goes, well, they're coming here in the winter. They're coming here in February. And I said, no way, really? And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, are you going to go? And he's like, well, I'm thinking about it. And I said, well, if you want somebody to go with you, I'll go. And so, so anyway, he ended up taking me and my brother, because it was my brother's birthday weekend. But my brother is a huge skeptic. He thinks we're nuts. And so he was documenting in an effort to make fun of us and everybody there at the expedition. But we ended up meeting the nicest people, and we had the best time and just learned some really, really interesting things. Got to listen to some really just extraordinary encounters. Just everyday people had these extraordinary encounters, and so my dad and I were just hooked. So we went to expedition after expedition. We just really got into it. And after I'd done several expeditions, I think it was my third actually, and I was in West Virginia. That's when I had my first, okay, this is real, there's something out here. I heard a howl that I can only describe as a man-beast howl. It was long and sustained, and like those classic howls that you hear on YouTube that people have recorded or whatever. And it came up on the ridge right behind where I was, where the group of us were standing, and the hair raised on the back of my neck. And I've never heard anything like it, never experienced anything like that. And then a series of wood knocks and rock throwing ensued after that. And I was like, okay, I was just so hooked after that experience, because I tried so desperately to see what was causing those noises and on those rocks to be thrown. I didn't get a visual on any of it, but it just gave me a thirst for more. So I ended up becoming an investigator for the BFRO for a time, and so did my husband. And we helped organize a few expeditions, and did that for a few years. And then I branched out. I brought a friend of mine, a couple of friends of mine, to an expedition, and they got hooked. And one of them, my friend Angela and I, we started kind of doing some stuff on our own, and we were recording what we were doing, and we were putting it on YouTube. And YouTube was just a brand new thing. Nobody really knew about YouTube. I mean, it was still kind of a brand new thing. And we started throwing up some videos of some things that we were doing. And as we branched out and started going on expeditions in Southeast Oklahoma, which is where Angela was from, we met up with some different researchers. And one of the people that I met there, was a marketing and branding person, and he'd seen some of the stuff that we've done, and he said, you guys you should brand yourselves and do something with this. And so kind of as a joke, he put a Facebook, he made a Facebook cover of me and Angela standing back to back wearing black leather jackets. Both pictures were taken in a completely different context. And he superimposed them over like a dark wooded forest, real green, but real dark and kind of spooky looking. And then he put coming soon, fall 2020, Bigfoot chicks. And so it looked really cool. It looked like a Reader's Digest cover or something. And so I put it up on my Facebook, because again, Facebook was still a very new entity. People were still getting to know it. And then like overnight, everyone started calling me and Angela, the Bigfoot chicks, and they started calling us for interviews. And so I mean, literally our calendar was like booked. Every week we would have an interview with somebody, and it was just it was kind of surreal, actually. Yeah. And so but we had the best time doing it, and we got invited to speak at a couple of different events, and we got to learn a lot about we got a hold of a database that had classic these like old classic wildman sightings, and we had a database of those, and we would share a lot of those. They were really, really interesting. But anyway, that's we got into that, and I did that for years. And then I did a lot of project work. I guess there were several ventures where we tried to make Bigfoot TV shows. And so I did a couple of sizzle reels, worked on a couple of projects with different people for that. And in the course of that, I got to work with Dr. Meldrum, and he's a great guy. And I got to know Adam Davies a bit. And so, I kind of took a sabbatical from that a couple of years ago, and just kind of got into a new hobby, which kind of meshes with this hobby. I drive an FJ Cruiser, and I have some buddies that are really, really big into. Well, they really covet my vehicle. They really love it, and so they were really saying, what would look really good on this FJ? You really need to lift this thing. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, you need to lift this thing. And these are stock tires. You need some bigger tires. You need mud tires on this thing. So and I'm like, really? Okay. So they did it. I bought the stuff, and they did all the work for me. And then, they basically taught me how to go off-roading, and how to really, I had a very, very cursory knowledge of how to use my 4-wheel drive. I hadn't used it very much, but now I can say I am confident I can use it. I've been through some really hairy spots. They take me on some really hairy trails, but I love it, and I've gotten really good at it. And it's kind of a new passion, but it meshes with my Bigfoot interest. These buddies think it's kind of cool. Some of them think it's cool that I like the Bigfoot thing, but the others are just like, they're just not into it. They think I'm kind of nuts. But they, I'm trying. I haven't quite won them all over yet, but my goal is to win them over so that we can get extremely remote, and do some research way back in the woods that you can't get to unless you have 4-wheel drive and the tools and the equipment, and the skills to get back there. So that's my hope for the future. But recently I've gotten back into doing Bigfooting, and I've been approached about doing a new project, which I know we'll probably talk about a little bit later. But I'm excited to be back and to be doing some more time in the woods, looking for the hairy guy.
Yeah, that's always fun. Hey, you said your brother was a skeptic. Have you swayed him any at all?
Well, this is funny. He's a huge skeptic, thinks we're nuts. But he and his wife were kayaking in North Georgia, and he was taking videos of it. And they were on the Ocoee. I don't know if you're familiar with that is, but anybody listening wants to look it up. They were on the Ocoee, and he got this. He was taking video of her, and there was like this movement on the bank behind her, and he sent the video to me. He said, "Look, I caught a squatch. And I'm like, when I first looked at it, it was interesting because you could see this movement, but if you studied it even just a little bit, you could tell it was just the foliage behind her head, and how it was filmed made it look like it was moving, but it wasn't. And so he was really shut down when I told him that, it's just the foliage behind her head. It's not
Yeah.
So he was a little disappointed. So I thought maybe we are starting to convert him just a little bit. But
yeah, it sounds like it's there.
Yeah. There's possibilities. For sure.
Did your father ever get to have any experiences while y'all were out?
Well, yes, not directly. He didn't see one, but he was with me when we experienced something. One time, we were in North Carolina, and we were on an expedition with a group of people. There were probably, I don't know, 15 or 20 people on this expedition. And it was very cold. I want to say it was February. And we were all dressed up in like hunter's jumpsuits, the ones you put your arms and legs through and you zip up the middle and you put that big cone hat on and you look like Sasquatch was walking around. Yeah. Everybody did. Because it was like, it was cold. It was like in the teens cold. It was really cold. And so we were walking across, the campground was in one area, and then there was this gravel road across the way that had like a pre-Civil War cemetery in it. And this area had a history of Bigfoot sightings. And so my dad and I, and a group of others, there were probably, I guess all total, there were about 5 or 6 of us. We're going to go just after midnight. We were going to go over into the cemetery, and we were going to make some calls and do some knocks. But first we were just going to sit and listen. That was our plan. So we went, and I was really excited to take my dad over there and the guys that were with us, because I don't think any of them had been to the cemetery yet. I had been to it a number of times during the day and at night. But so anyway, I led this group over there. Now, this was before thermals were a dime a dozen. It was before everybody had access to that. So there were 2 or 3 guys that had night vision. That's all they had. And so I walked down this road, and everybody was behind me. So I was right at the lead of this road, and I was really excited. And we started walking down, and the only way I can describe it is all of a sudden I walked into a wall of fear. I got really scared, and my heart was racing, and I started breathing heavy, and I don't know what caused it. Because a few seconds before I was like really excited, and this was fun. This is what I like to do. And I was leading all these new people down here. And so I didn't say anything to anybody. I just kept talking myself out of it. I'm like, you're freaking yourself out. You're just freaking yourself out. You're fine. Just keep walking. And so I did. And by the time we reached the cemetery, it had simmered a little bit. It wasn't as strong as it was before, but it was still kind of there on the periphery. So we got into the cemetery, and my dad and I just kind of sat down in an open clearing, and then everybody just spaced out around the edges of the cemetery. And we just waited, we just listened for a while. That feeling kind of diminished a bit at that point. I didn't feel as scared. And so we stayed for a while. We listened for a long time. Nothing happened. So we decided to make some calls and wood knocks. I have a really loud yell. So I yelled, and I did that a few times. We didn't hear any kind of return. So several people did some wood knocks. We didn't hear anything. And because it's so cold and we were sitting on the ground, which was a mistake, my dad was getting really cold, and I was worried about him. And I said, let's take you back to the campfire so you can warm up. So I told the guys that we were with that we were going to go ahead and head back to the camp. And they said they were going to hang out for a few more minutes, and then they'd follow us back to the camp. And so as my dad and I walked out of the cemetery and stepped down onto the gravel road, again, I was in front. I stepped down, and I walked a few paces and realized he wasn't behind me. So I turned and looked, and he's behind me, and he's looking behind him. And I'm like, yeah. Dad, what are you doing? And he's like, he goes, I thought somebody was coming with us. And I thought I heard somebody behind me. And I'm like, well, there's nobody there. So we walked, the same road we came in on. We walked down it and crossed over and went back into our campground. And I took him to the campfire and got him warmed up. And I just kind of went around the camp and was talking to other people in the camp that were still there that hadn't come with us, and just telling them, reporting on what we'd done or whatever. And by the time I had finished doing that, I'd only been gone, I'd only delivered my dad and made some rounds in the campground. I'd only been gone 5 or 10 minutes when all the other guys that we'd left in the cemetery come rushing up to me and said, where was that road? Where was that road that you walked down, that trail that you took to get back to camp? And I was really confused. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I walked out the same way we walked in. We all walked on that road. And so they said, no. When you went through the woods, there was a place where you went through the woods. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't go through the woods. I stayed on the same road. And they said, no, when you split off from your dad. And and at that moment, we're all like, our eyes are like saucers, and we're like, you saw something other than me. So at that point, we were all super excited. And so we all hightailed it back over there, took like anybody that had night vision, we went back over there and we reenacted our departure. And so as we did that, they watched us, walk out the exact same way we had done before. And they said, whatever we saw, it wasn't you. It didn't look the same. And it was paralleling you, as you were walking down the gravel road, it was paralleling you through the woods. And it looked like you had split off from your dad, to somebody that wasn't paying attention. So what I believe happened is that when we were walking in, there was something there. And, that caused me to have those feelings. All of a sudden I was not the biggest person on the food chain. And so, as we were walking out, I think it crossed behind my dad into the woods. And I think that's what he heard. Yeah. And so when we realized that, we were like, wow, we were really close to something. We're going to assume it was a Bigfoot. That's what we're out here to see. So, but yeah, that was really exciting. And so we didn't see it, but we experienced all those things. And after doing the amount of research that we've done, we feel like that we were probably pretty close to one that night.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Whenever even though you didn't see it yourself, that somebody saw something within feet of you. Definitely.
Now, you told us about your first experience and hearing the howls when you were out with the BFRO. Tell us about your second experience.
Okay. The one that I told you about before?
Yes.
Okay. I can't remember if that was my second one, but it was a good one. There's two. Let's see. Yeah, this is the second one was when I was with my husband. That was the one, and that was in Georgia. We were. This was during the time when handheld GPS was brand new. So at Father's Day weekend, we were in North Georgia. We were staying in a cabin with family, and we left at midnight. My dad was actually there with us, but he was too tired to go out. So it was just me and my husband. And we went out to this particular area that has a history of Bigfoot sightings. And we'd been there before. And so we went out and we drove to the base of this mountain, and there's like a turnaround. And so we drove into the turnaround. It's like a gravel parking lot, and there was nobody there. And so we pulled in, and again, when we were there, when we were pulling in, I'm usually pretty brave. Because I've done this enough to know that you can be brave. You can be brave until you don't need to be brave anymore. So I'm usually pretty brave. And so when we got up there, I don't know if it's just because it was such a small number, or it's just me and him. Maybe I didn't have complete faith that he would protect me. I don't know. I was really I was scared. I was kind of scared. And so I didn't want to leave the car. I didn't want to leave the safety of the car, which was unusual, highly unusual for me. So I just opened the door and I sat with my feet on the ground, but I sat in the passenger seat with the door open and my feet on the ground. And so my husband set up a computer in the back of the car with speakers, and he had a bunch of different sounds, a bunch of different forest sounds and just some different animal sounds. And he had mixed them all together with some of the hoop knock sequence from the Sierra sounds that are supposedly alleged Sasquatch sounds. So he was call blasting those out of the back of the car. And so as he was making those, doing the call blasting, I did hear movement, maybe like 50 yards in front of, maybe not that far, like 25 yards in front of me. I heard movement, but we'd seen deer on the way in. So I thought it's just those deer, you know? So I heard movement kind of in front of me. And then as he, as he continued to play that, I heard whatever I heard that was directly in front of me at my 12 o'clock, it moved off to my 10 o'clock. And, the door was open, so there's that V of nothingness from where the door opens from the car. And as I was sitting there, all of a sudden, it was as if somebody walked up and put their head right there in the crack of that window. And we're going to say, hey, it's like, how you can feel that biokinetic energy when somebody walks up to you. You might be blindfolded or you might not be looking, but you can feel that they're there. That's what it felt like. It felt like somebody was there, and it freaked me out so bad because I sat up really straight and looked in that direction, but nothing was there. Nothing was there. And so I sat down, or I was still sitting. I never stood up, but I sat, I kind of slumped back down and just was like, that was weird. And then it started from my toes and went all the way up to the top of my head. I just started feeling really tingly all over and kind of euphoric. And then it started to intensify. And I'm like, I better say something to my husband just in case I fall out. And he's like, has no clue what's going on with me. And so, but my first thought was like, what did I eat? Am I having a reaction to something that I ate? It was weird. Yeah. And so as it was intensifying, it didn't feel bad and I didn't feel scared, but it was just weird. And so I just said, honey, I feel weird. I feel tingly. And as soon as I said that, he just looked right at me and he said, so do I. And I said, I feel like it's coming from this direction from my 10 o'clock. I didn't point, but I just kind of nodded. It's coming from my 10 o'clock. He goes, yes. He goes, that's where it's coming from. And so I said, are we being zapped, which is a term in Bigfoot circles, for infrasound or whatever. That's that's alleging what's happening is that we're being blasted by infrasound. And so I said, do you think we should leave? And he paused for a minute and he's like, yeah, I think we should leave. So so I just like, as soon as he said yes, I just grabbed my feet inside and slammed the door. And I was like ready to go. And he was packing up all the stuff really quick and he got in the car and we drove out. And by the time we got back down to the main road, he looked at me and he goes, we have to go back. And I'm like, what? He goes, we have to go back. He goes, I left my brand new GPS on the ground.
Oh.
And so I'm like, so we drove back like this, and we're like on the dash like this, like looking like what's happening, what's that there? And so it was crazy. So we were we went back up and I didn't get out of the car, but I kind of opened the door again or rolled down the window and just kind of was sampling the atmosphere. And it wasn't the same, but I still felt unnerved by the experience. And so we left. And the next day we came back and we're looking for tracks and things. At the time, we had not had any tracking courses or any real knowledge of tracking, just us looking for stuff. We've since had some tracking courses, but knowing what I know now and looking back, I had found an impression and, but it wasn't like a perfect castable impression. but I found an impression that very well could have been, what we were hoping it was, and it was facing exactly in the direction that we felt this strange experience was coming from. So we thought that was pretty cool. That was like the first, that was like the second time that particular thing, that kind of experience happened to me. And then I had that one other experience that I told you about, that if you want me to share that, I can too. Where it happened, that was in actually North Florida. That's where that was.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated by infrasound, and I have been in the woods with someone that maybe they're a little bit more sensitive to it than I am. But tell us what you know about infrasound.
Well, just what I've read, like anybody else has read. It's a sound lower than the human ear can hear. It exists in nature. Elephants were the first, I guess, the first place that it was kind of discovered, that it has an impact on human bodies. People that were in zoos that were working with elephants, reported all these different symptoms, from feeling euphoric to feeling really sick, to getting really dizzy, to passing out, to fainting. I mean, they were just really odd symptoms that they were having. And then they finally realized, the elephants were generating this infrasound, which is sound lower than the human ear can hear. It also exists in nature. Thunderstorms can create it. Big cats can also create infrasound. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say any animal with a large chest cavity probably can generate that sound as well. But that's just me guessing. But yeah, it is something that does exist in nature. And so I'm, now that I've experienced something that I believe is infrasound 3 different times, and the experience was different each time, similar but different. I could see that, maybe that's what it was, there some sort of, because it did feel directional. Every time. Yeah, every time.
That's interesting. I just saw in the chat where someone asked a question. I wonder if you could call blast infrasound. I've never even thought of that before, but I would think it's possible that you could, put it out there like that.
I'm sure there are generators that can generate. I've never really researched doing that, but yeah, I'm sure there are generators. I know that they do the anti-loitering thing, where they make some sort of sound that makes people feel uncomfortable.
Right.
And so it's a similar kind of thing. I don't think that's infrasound. I think that's the opposite. I think it's higher pitch sound, but it makes you uncomfortable, and it keeps people from loitering because they're uncomfortable being wherever that sound generating thing is. So I'm sure it's possible. But I don't know anybody whose expertise is, dabbling in that kind of thing, but it would be really interesting to find somebody.
Tell us about some of the things that Dr. Meldrum has shared with you that you have been able to take and apply it to your own research.
He is just a fountain of knowledge. He's the coolest person to ever talk to at the campfire. He's so articulate and so well versed in like any science subject. It's just ridiculous. And he is passionate about the subject of Bigfoot. And so what I have learned from him is that if you see an impression, cast it, and send it to him. Let him look at it, and he will make a diagnosis on that as to whether or not it's a legitimate footprint, number one, and then give you the markers as to whether or not it was made by a human or a bear. Well, often things, as we all know, bear prints are often mistaken for Bigfoot prints. So he's like that was the biggest thing, is don't be afraid to make a cast and send it to him. He'll look at it and he'll let you know, what he thinks. He'll give you his honest opinion about that. The other thing that I learned is he teaches some sort of physiology, one of his class, anthropology and a physiology class, and he actually uses the Patterson-Gimlin film of Patty walking across with his students when he is teaching them to study the determinants of gait. So I found that fascinating. Yeah. And so so he uses that with his college students. And so one of the things that I had asked him was about, there was an analysis done about the degree of shin rise that the average human makes when they're walking. And then they measure that shin rise, and then they measured the shin rise in the Patterson-Gimlin film, and of course it was different. And so even if you tried to replicate Patty's walk and put on different kinds of flippers or whatever and try to make yourself walk more like the creature, you still don't affect that shin rise. So I found that really, really fascinating. And he and I talked about that a bit when we were together, and just saying that these creatures, they do have a unique and distinct gait, which is different from humans. And so the metatarsal break may play a part in that, and then just their sheer body mass and how they carry themselves. And because they probably go back and forth between being bipedal and quadrupedal, depending, just kind of like apes do. Anyway, that's just one of the things I remember us discussing, and I just found that really, really interesting.
How, going into the woods and thinking about how you have learned things and applying different strategies and tactics, how would you describe your method of field research now?
Well, I would say it's more like fishing to me now than it was before. When I first was into it, I felt like I was following everyone's guidelines that anybody would give me, and doing all these things, and often not getting any results. And so now my approach to it is just pretend like pretend like this is a fishing trip. Hold on, my dog wants to be here. Yeah, kind of pretend like this is a fishing trip. So when you're fishing, you take all of your equipment and everything that you need, but you're going to have fun. Number one, that's the number one rule: have fun. Number two, make sure you have all the right equipment that you need to catch the fish. So if you're going to document it or whatever, and then make sure you have, and part of that is a DNA collection kit. Make sure you've got that if you happen across anything, so that that if you can send this to a lab or send something to Dr. Meldrum, at least if it comes back as unknown primate, you might be in the right spot. You might have a great spot. So I guess now it's more about listening and observing more, but being prepared to document more so than it was charging in, blasting, doing all this stuff. I more or less, the first day, just I'm camping and just observing. The second day, if I feel like I've heard something or seen something somewhere, the second day I might spend more time in that area, and then at that night, that's when I will employ some sort of tactic, like maybe I'll do wood knocks, or maybe I'll do a call. Not too many, and just see if anything comes back. And then, if I'm in that area for a while and nothing happens, then the next time I'll move to a different area, where a sighting had occurred or whatever. If I have the opportunity to go call blasting or go with somebody that's going to call blast, I'm always really interested in that, because it's been kind of mixed. Sometimes we think we're getting some sort of results with it, and other times not so much. And sometimes we just call in a bunch of coyotes. So it just kind of depends. But yeah, I would say that's my approach, is just a careful, measured approach, and with a focus on fun, but a focus on being prepared if you do come across something, and just taking your time with it. Taking your time in each area and really getting to know the lay of the land, and studying the reports, ahead of time. The time of day, the season, who it was, what their genders were, where they were, what they were doing. Because a lot of times it seems like, it's just campers having fun and they're being observed when these things happen. So that's always my ultimate goal, is that I'm just kind of in an off moment, just laughing around the fire, and then we hear something. So,
Right.
so that's what I'm always hoping for. That would be the ideal. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I don't know if that's a good answer to your question or not, but that's kind of my approach right now.
That's a good approach. It
Yeah.
works. So from the beginning, whenever you got into this subject till now, has your thoughts changed on what Bigfoot may be and what they're capable of, or anything you've changed from the beginning till now?
I'm more open-minded about what they might be capable of. Just because I've interviewed so many people, the vast majority of people, they just have this creature sighting. It scares them to death. Sometimes it changes their behavior. Like they're these big burly men that have hunted their whole lives, and then they see something in the woods and they never go back, or they won't go back at night, and they certainly won't go alone. So their behavior has changed. So I find that really interesting. It scared them. It made that kind of impression on them. So they really, they saw something that forever changed them. So, I've also interviewed a couple of people that have had, experiences where, they've seen the red eye shine. I was with a group where somebody did see the red eye shine. I didn't see it. And that bioluminescence, that it does exist in nature, so that could be a real thing. We read reports about it, we hear stuff about it. I personally haven't witnessed it yet, but I'm open to that. I know there's two camps. There's he's a physical flesh and blood creature, and there's the kind of the woo camp where he's metaphysical kind of creature, multidimensional, whatever. Everything I have experienced, the majority of what I've experienced, points to a more physical creature. But I don't have all the answers, and I haven't had the same experience as other people have had. So I'm open to there being more to the story. When I first started, I was not open to there being more to the story. So, I just, right now I can't say anything other than flesh and blood creature, because I haven't experienced it, and don't know. No one close to me has had anything beyond that. So I don't know, but I have read some things, and then interviewed or read through interviews other people have done where interesting things have occurred. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to find out, but I'm definitely more open to that than I was when I first started.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, you sound just like us, because we were just, everything goes into the flesh and blood box, and we have experienced things, and we have talked with people that we believe that are credible people that have told us things that, probably 10 years ago that we would have just thought, well, maybe they're just confused or whatever. But we are a whole lot more open now to different things. But if you can think of one of your most interesting interviews that you have had with a witness that has really stuck out to you, that really made you think about, wow, what if this did happen? Is there anything that comes to mind when you think about interviewing witnesses?
Are you looking for something specific, or just an interview that stuck with me?
Just an interview that has stuck with you.
There was a girl that she was on a BFRO expedition, and she was with I guess there had been a guy from the expedition that was camped. It was somewhere in Florida, and it was camped by himself. And something I think she went with him. That's what it was. She went in to the forested area with him when it was still light. The sun was starting to set, but they went in to set up their camp. And as soon as they were in the area, I think the guy stood up on a fallen tree just to kind of survey the area where they're going to set up their tents. And as soon as he stood up on that tree, he heard 3 loud wood knocks that popped like all around him in rapid succession. And so he looked at her and said, well, I guess we're in the right place. and so they set up a couple of tents. And so he stayed there by himself. I guess because she went on another part of the expedition and then she was going to return later that evening. And so anyway, when they came back to check on him, he'd been there for hours by himself. And he when they came into radio contact with him, he was freaking out. I mean, he was just, they had to get him to slow down to understand what he was saying. And he was saying, you know, that there were multiple creatures all around his tent, and that he was, you know, curled up in the fetal position, praying that he wouldn't die, and he was terrified. And so she was like, "Okay, you just need to calm down. I'm going to walk down the road. I'm going to bring you a beer." So they dropped her off at the top of this road. This is how brave this girl was. She knew that was going on, allegedly, you know, or he was claiming that this was happening. And so she walks down to meet up with him. She carries him a beer and whatever and meets up with him. And when she finds him, he's like white as a ghost and just completely freaked out. And she kind of got him to talk to her a little bit and to settle down, and just hung out with him around the campfire. And you know, as the campfire died down or whatever, they were hearing more movement or whatever. And at that point, she had to go to the bathroom. And she's like, I gotta go to the bathroom. And so she walks away, you know, from the campsite to go heed nature's call. And while she's there, with her pants down, the thing bluff charges her. And so she's like, she screamed at it, "You're not playing fair." and so she was scared, but she's a real brave person, you know. And so so that happened, and so all it did was bluff charge. It just stopped. It didn't come any closer, but she could hear it, you know, kind of growling and snarling. And so she went back. But anyway, they ended up staying in those tents, but they heard that, you know, this movement. They said they think it was 3 creatures all around that area during the night. And so that guy packed up and left the next day. He didn't come back. He was terrified. But I got to interview her. And so that interview has always stuck with me because, number one, it was probably the most aggressive encounter that I'd ever heard of. And so, and then I was just so struck by her bravery. I don't know that I would have done what she did.
I think you have no choice whenever you got your pants down.
Right.
What are some of the common denominators that you have found in the field that has helped you whenever you go out looking for evidence?
Number one, creepy feeling. If I have a creepy feeling, I listen to that feeling. So that's been a common denominator several times. The other, low light. Third thing is, if there's just a couple of women by themselves, no men. That has been interesting to see what's happened when it's just women. Yeah, those would probably be the top three common denominators.
Yeah, we know several lady groups that go out by themselves, and it just seems like they have so much more activity, and things will ramp up more, than it will be if you've got a bunch of guys that are together. And I think that's a great strategy to use. And Larry and I have been fortunate enough to be able to research with a lot of ladies, and their perceptions in the woods are, for me, just my impression, my opinion, are so much better than a man's perception out in the woods. And I I encourage people that go out, guys that go out, that if there are ladies that are wanting to go out and experience this, to let them come along, because there's so much that we can learn from the women that go out into the woods.
Yeah, I agree. When I, yeah, I agree. I don't know why, I remember talking to Matt Moneymaker about it one time, because he was convinced, of all the people on an expedition, if there was just one woman or a couple of women, those would be the people to have some sort of encounter. And I talked about, this was when I was very first getting into it, and I talked to him about it at length. And of course, his philosophy, which was a decent philosophy, women don't generally go out in masses into the woods to hunt. They're usually tending children, or they're or small animals, or they're just, or kind of keeping the campsite. They're not, if they're in the woods, that's kind of what they're doing. They're not as much of a threat, or can't be perceived as much of a threat. And then of course, as a group, we tend to be smaller in stature, so maybe we don't look as threatening. And we don't have facial hair.
Yeah. That's what scares me about Mark.
Tell us another one of your encounter stories.
Okay, this is one of my favorites, and this is the two women thing. This was in North Florida, and I was on an expedition, and this area had a rich history of sightings on this particular property. These creatures had interacted with the particular family that lived on this property for years. And so we got permission to have an expedition on their property, and our base camp was about a mile away. And so we had to either walk or take golf. A couple of people brought like golf carts or mules or whatever, and we would drive those over to their property. Most of us were camped a mile away. Only a couple of people were camped on the very edge of their property. And so we'd been there for a couple of days, and this was like the third day, and not much to report, but just amazing interviewing the family and hearing about their experiences and the different things they had witnessed on the property. And so during the course, this family was invited to be a part of the expedition, of course, and so they got to be a part of all of our different meetings. And in one of the meetings, I was awarded a certificate of completion for a man tracking course that I had taken by a certified tracker. He had offered a weekend course to a bunch of different Sasquatch enthusiasts, and we all went and took it. And so he was giving us our certificate of completion, and they made a big deal about, giving these certificates out. And so the woman of this property had witnessed me getting this certificate. So in her mind, I was a tracker. And so she came up to me and said, "I found this track on my property. I know you're a tracker. Could you come look at it? And I just started laughing. And I said, well, I took one tracking weekend course. I said, so I'm not an expert, but I'd be happy to come look at your track. So everybody was at base camp preparing like a big meal, and no one had their radios on. Everything was, it was a jolly time. Everybody was just kind of being social. So she takes me on her golf cart and we go over to her property, and we walk up to this kind of garden area, and she shows me this footprint. And so I bend down and look at this print, and it looks like a human child's footprint. I mean, it's almost perfect in how it looks, but it looks very human, which was odd. And it was just one single print. There was no transfer. There was no partial tracks. I couldn't see a trackway. There was nothing. And so in my excitement to go with her to look at this track, I had forgotten to bring my flashlight, which, that's the tracker's tool. You got to have your flashlight. And so I said, I forgot my flashlight. She goes, oh, well, I have one. It's just right inside in the house. It's right there in the kitchen. So when you walk in her front door, you basically walk into her kitchen. And so I'm sitting there, I'm kneeling down, studying this track, and she walks away from me and goes down into her house to get the flashlight. So I had that thought just at that moment: if something's going to happen, it's going to happen right now, because I'm all by myself out here and nobody has their radio on. And before I could really let that thought freak me out, she came back. And so she gave me her flashlight. So I'm studying the track with the flashlight. I'm looking, and I'm not seeing anything that gives me anything to go on. It's just kind of an odd occurrence. And so as I stand up and we're kind of talking, my phone starts to ring, and I answer the phone. It's my husband. I'm just checking in. He's calling to check in. And so, but right before my phone rang, she said, do you smell that? And I'm like, smell what? And she goes, just walk down towards my house and see if you catch a whiff of that. She goes, I always smell that when they're around. And so at that moment, my phone rang. It was my husband. So I answered it, and I was talking to him, and I walked down back towards her house, the way she'd come, and then started walking the edge of her front yard property. I never caught a whiff of anything, but right as I got to the very edge of her property at the end of this garden area, I turned off my phone and put it in my pocket. And then a couple of things happened all at once. I got goosebumps on the backs of my legs, and it went all the way up and over the top of my head into my shoulders, like serious goosebumps. And then at the same exact time, she had 3 dogs. One dog started barking, and it was like that alert bark. It was barking at something. It was alert barking, just arf, 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 just wouldn't. It was like an alarm going off. And so I just calmly walked back towards her. Well, all this is going on, and I'm looking at the track again, and I stand up, and none of this is diminished. It's still going on. And so we talk for just a second, and I say, how do you feel right now? And she goes, oh, I have goosebumps. And she pulls her arm up. So we put our arms next to each other, and we've got matching goosebumps. And so I'm like, I noticed when this started that your dog started barking. She goes, oh yeah. She goes, when they're around, the youngest one will be barking like crazy. And she goes, the other 2 will be all curled up, like they're terrified. And I said, well, let's go check on your dogs. So we went, we walked over, and her fence, she had like a fence where the dog was. And she goes, sure enough, it was the youngest dog, and he was barking, but he wasn't barking in any one particular direction. He was just barking, but something was like he heard something, but he didn't know where it was. And he's just bark, 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 like it was bothering him. And then we walked up to the side of her house, and sure enough, there was the other dog curled up, tail tucked under, just like cowering. And then we walked around to the other side of the house, and there's her other dog curled up, tail under, just completely terrified. And at that moment, I started hearing something being thrown through trees. Just like repeatedly, like something like if you were to hear a rock or a pine cone go through trees, like through the leaves. I kept hearing it. And so I looked at her, I said, have you heard that before? She goes, oh yeah. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, let's walk towards the direction of the sound and see if we see anything. So we start walking, towards the side of her house where we're hearing this. And then as I round the side of her house, I caught movement of something. I have no idea what it was. It could have been a bird. It could have been a butterfly. It could have been anything, but something moved at lightning speed just out of my vision as I rounded the corner. I don't know what it was. It was just a freak flash. I have no idea what it was. And so at that moment, I was looking at her and I'm like, I feel like this feeling is intensifying and I'm kind of getting uncomfortable. And I feel like we should let people know what's happening here. And she agreed. So I got on the radio and I knew nobody had the radios on. So it was like a desperation call. So I get on the radio and I'm calling, and this guy, I think his name was Chuck. Chuck answers, and I said, Chuck, and he goes, I said, we've got some activity going on up here, and we'd like another opinion. Could you come up here? And he happened to be right around the corner. He was one of those people camping right around the corner. He wasn't over like a mile away where base camp was. And he goes, yeah, I'll be there in like less than a minute. So he pulls up and he walks up to me, and Chuck was a young, tall, Finnish, muscular guy. He was probably 6'2", and he walked up to me, and I was probably just vomiting what happened to him. I probably talking 100 miles an hour. I was like so ramped up on what was happening. And as soon as I got it all out, and as soon as I finished telling him everything we had just experienced, silence. It was like a complete hush, a complete calm had settled over that area. It was just, everything was relaxed. I didn't feel scared or uncomfortable anymore. The dog stopped barking. The other two dogs were up and walking around. The weirdest thing. So that's when I kind of started to realize, and with other experiences I'd had too, that two women are not a threat. But when that man came, and he was physically bigger than us in stature, all of a sudden our territorial protector was there. Does that make sense? And so it just left. So that was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had. Never saw anything, but that was just kind of, I can't explain what that was, but I didn't experience it alone. Someone else was with me.
Yeah. Out of all the expeditions you've been on, and who has gained your respect and taught you more than anybody, besides maybe your husband and your father, that you've met on these expeditions? And I know you've been out with Dr. Meldrum, but I know that's an obvious, but anybody other than that?
Gosh, I don't know. There are several good friends that I have here that are just really, really knowledgeable about a lot of things I'm not knowledgeable about. They have a lot of hunting experience, a lot of tracking experience, and they're willing to share those skills and teach you. And I have a lot of respect for those people, for sure. Yeah. There's really too many for me to name, and there's not just one person that stands out in my mind among another, because like I said, from the very beginning, I have met so many awesome people, just normal, everyday people that love to be in the woods as much as I do, and just think this is the coolest thing. It's like the last great mystery that we're all trying to solve. And it's just, it's just something fun to do. So yeah, I mean, there are a number of people, male and female, that I have learned a lot from out in the woods and have the greatest respect for. So I don't think it'd be fair to just pinpoint one.
Hey, I understand that. There's nothing wrong with that answer. That is the beauty of the Bigfoot community. 98% of them are some of the greatest people you ever meet. And the 2%, you just let them walk away.
The 2% keeps it interesting.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. No doubt. So where are some of the states, areas that you've been on expeditions, and what are some of your favorite ones?
Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, West Virginia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, Missouri, Oklahoma, of course. I haven't really done a full-blown expedition in the Pacific Northwest, and that's what I'm hoping for. I've been out there and I've poked around, in the woods a little bit, but it wasn't really an expedition. But I would love to go on an organized expedition out there. But yeah, mostly the Gulf states and the eastern seaboard up to about West Virginia. I've been to all those states. Some of my favorite places to go. Did I say Texas? I've also been to Texas. Yeah. Some of my favorite places, Oklahoma. Loved going to Oklahoma. North Carolina, have had a lot of activity in North Carolina. Yeah. Love that place. I of course love my home state. Love going here. A lot of good memories. And let me think. Yeah, and West Virginia was cool, and just a beautiful, beautiful state. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, those are probably some of my favorites.
I've not made it to North Carolina or West Virginia, so I know Mark's made it to North Carolina, and he scared them all away. But
now, Melissa, you have signed on with a new film/movie project. Would you what you can tell us about that? Would you be willing to share with us?
Yes, I would be happy to share what I know, which is not a whole lot. So I'm not under contract not to divulge anything, but I'll tell you what I know. Extreme Expeditions Northwest, which you can follow them on Facebook or on YouTube. They do a lot of documentaries, and they have put out some docudramas as well. They do an outstanding job. I've been really, really impressed with what I have seen from them. Stephen Major is the owner operator of that outfit, and he is going to put together a movie called The Siege at Alpha 5, which is a completely fictional movie. It's an action adventure movie. And so what it's going to do is follow real Bigfoot researchers into the Pacific Northwest area. It's going to be filmed in Washington State. And so they're going to run into a tribe of aggressive, hostile, vicious Sasquatch. And while they are having this encounter, they're going to seek refuge in an abandoned military facility. And so they're not going to be able to call for help through the normal means because they're so deep in the woods. So their radios and things that they're calling on, those signals are going to be picked up by some ex-military vets in the area. And the ex-military vets are going to come to their rescue. I understand someone is going to be a casualty, but it's not me. It's not me. Someone is going to be a casualty, and there is going to be explosions, helicopters, all kinds of cool stuff. So it's going to be this really cool action adventure movie. Yeah. So yeah, I'm very excited about it. We're supposed to start filming later this fall, and we'll know probably in the next month or so what that's going to look like. Right now, they're having a lot of forest fires out there, and so that's going to impact the filming situation. So if it's too if the land is too torn up by that, and it makes filming impossible, we will have to wait till spring. But we have been assured that we're definitely filming it, and so it will be sometime this fall or next spring. So that's really all I know. But as I participate in that event, I will be documenting every step of it, because it's the opportunity of a lifetime. And so I will be sharing all that on my Bigfoot Chicks adventure page, so that you can follow along with that. And of course, when I know it's going to be released, I will let everybody know what I know, and hopefully you'll go watch it. And I know it's going to be fun. It'll be great, and that you'll love it. Adam Davies is going to be in it. He's our, I guess, celebrity that's going to be in that movie. And Kip Morrill is going to be in it. He's a well-known figure in the Bigfoot community. And there's going to be several other people that you may recognize from some Bigfoot, either Bigfoot conferences or Bigfoot expeditions that you may have attended or watched, or videos that you've watched. So there's some really great people involved with the project. So I am so looking forward to it, and I wish I knew more, but that's where I am. I'm kind of waiting too. So
right. So you hadn't received the script yet, huh?
Haven't seen the script yet. It's mostly unscripted, which is great, because none of us are actors.
I understand. Yeah, that will be interesting for sure.
Yeah. So I think it's loosely scripted. So I don't think there's a whole lot that I think it's just going to be us in our normal habitat. And most of us are kind of characters, so will be entertaining, probably, just to watch. So it should be fun. But yeah, I'm really excited about it, and I know it's going to be. I know I've watched I can't recommend Stephen Major's work enough. If you've seen any of the stuff he's done, the Bigfoot stuff he's done, they're fabulous. So well done. So I know this will be good. This won't be any exception. It'll be good too.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say that we are going to pin the link to Bigfoot Chick Adventures at the top of the comment section. So if you would like to go and click on that link and join up, then you will be able to keep up with Melissa and this exciting role that she's going to be playing. Now, one thing that I would like to ask is, for those that are out there that have been teetering on, well, I would maybe like to get out in the woods and see if I could find, some Bigfoot evidence, or have some activity happen around me. And they just they're new and they want to dip their toes in that water. What advice would you give them for wanting to maybe have a better learning curve?
First of all, if you're thinking about do it. Because at the worst, it's an awesome camping trip. At the very worst, it's an awesome camping trip. At the very best, it's like an unbelievable and unforgettable experience. Something, if you get to see one, great. I still haven't seen one yet. But all the other experiences you could have in association will just be unforgettable, and just be so cool. But to have, like I said before, my approach is a way more casual now than it used to be. I go with the idea that I'm going on a camping trip, and I'm going to be an interesting camper, and I'm going to have fun. But I'm prepared. So I have everything I need, to see. To have, I have stuff to see with during the daytime, stuff to see with during the nighttime. You don't have to spend a lot of money, but, just go with a friend that's got the equipment. If you know somebody, just to see if it's something you really want to get into. And then you'll get hooked, and then you'll have to buy all the toys like we all do. And so, just go and try it. But yeah, just go and listen and observe first, more than anything else. And then, and be aware of how you're feeling, because those feelings are there for a reason, to protect you. Yeah. So, even if it's not Bigfoot, it could be some creepy guy in the woods. Just pay attention to your feelings and just, listen to that. And but if you get what I call the squatchy feeling, where you just feel like, okay, there might be something watching me or something here, pay attention to that, and maybe set that area up as an area for observation, and then first observe, and then maybe try to do some calls or wood knock. I wouldn't do them excessively, just do a few, because if they're there and they want to play, they'll play. But just kind of think of it as fishing. You may or may not get a response your first time or your first 100 times, but you just have to keep going. And if you are passionate about being in the woods and camping and just having a good time with friends, it just makes it all the more fun to me. So, but yeah, if you're thinking about doing it, if you even have an inkling to do it, I would say go do it. You won't regret it. It'll be super fun.
Definitely. Have you got any upcoming expeditions or anything besides the film that's coming up?
I've got, I'm actually going camping this weekend, and I am going to, my husband is actually going to be able to come with me this time. And so we are definitely going to do some Bigfooting. So that'll be fun. And that'll be here in my home state. But, and I'm not going to say where, but we're gonna have some fun and see if we can't rustle up some responses or just get something exciting happening. Because where I routinely go exploring is rich in Bigfoot sighting history. So we're in a good spot. So if they're around, maybe we'll see them. So we always hope that when we're driving along those Forest Service roads, that one will just cross our path.
Right.
And then we've had the experience. And then I'm like, no, because we'll be so awestruck, we won't take a picture and we won't film it. So we'll still continue looking and trying to get that perfect footage. And then no one will believe it because they'll say it's not.
How it is. So, that's true.
So, but anyway, but this weekend is going to be a fun weekend. So fingers crossed that something exciting happens.
I think in northern Georgia, you could camp at the edge of any town and have some experience. Yeah. So that's good.
When you go out, what is your favorite piece of equipment to take with you to document if anything happens?
My camera on my phone and my recorder on my phone, because I'm so well versed in those buttons, I can do them really quickly. And I've recorded plenty on that. And I always have it on me. I take so many pictures and get recordings of different things. So that's my favorite piece of equipment. My second favorite piece of equipment, I have, and people, you're going to laugh. I have a knocker, just one. It's part of a drum set. It's a wood block. And so if you strike it just right with the back of a drumstick, it makes a super loud knock, really loud. And it's, some people are like, they're purists, like, oh, it doesn't sound like wood on wood. And I'm like, well, I don't care. It's close enough. and it's really loud. So that's my favorite. That's my favorite tool that I use to try to make invitations. That's not really for recording, but if I'm going to record something really, really cool that I think is happening, I have a record. Like if it's a sound event, I have a recorder also that I carry.
Yeah.
So I do that, but I'm more of a visual in the moment kind of person. And so if something major happens, I will sit down and journal it, write it down. So as soon as it happens, so I don't forget anything. And then, I'll document with taking pictures or taking video or just video record myself telling what just happened or whatever. So I have an account of it fresh. So right. I think those are the easiest tools to use. And then you don't forget all the details. So that's nice. But like I said, I've taken a long sabbatical and I'm just getting back into it. So I'm sure that my methods may change again. So we'll see.
Right. Well, you just gave people great advice, because you talked about if you have an encounter to journal it or video yourself talking about what happened. Because a lot of times your adrenaline's going so much that you forget things if you don't do it right then.
Right.
I wanted to let the chat room know that if anybody has any questions for Melissa, if you will put them in all caps, then we will put Melissa on the spot.
You are filtering these questions, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, they won't be bad.
Okay.
I see one from Miss Jonah's Garden right now that says, "Have you tried playing the violin while you've been camping or on an expedition?"
I have, and only the campers seem to enjoy it.
Well, you got to play violin better than I play guitar, so.
You know, I my personal opinion is that these creatures are really curious, and we're kind of like their TV, we're their entertainment. And so I think anything that you come up with to do out there that it will hold their attention. And so I think it's important to think outside the box and try different things. And so what
I was going to say, yeah, we've been pretty crazy at times. I mean, we've staged like raves where all the cars were at one spot and everybody's there and the music was loud and we were like dancing around. We've done that, and then we had people, on the periphery watching to see if anything was moving in. We've done that a couple times, and then when I used to go out with Angela, when she and I used to do a lot of it, we would actually just do the electric slide together in the woods in the dark. And just without the music, we were just dancing, we just do the electric slide. And and of course anybody watching was cracking up and laughing, watching us through a thermal or whatever. But I just said, we're interesting, we're moving, we're people that are not in a normal place doing these same movements over and over again. It's got to be interesting. So we've done some crazy things. I can't say that anything has really worked yet, but we have fun. So
yeah.
And you don't really know if it's even working. I mean, they could be on top of a ridge, a quarter mile away, just watching, especially if you have like a fire going and people moving around. I think camp is one of the best places to where you might experience some interaction with these creatures.
Right. And that's one of the techniques that we have done, which I refer to as a baiting technique. Bacon and onions grilled in a cast iron skillet on the fire. We call it the Widowmaker. And I made it one time for somebody, and I gave, when it cooks down, you don't want it to burn because then it doesn't smell good. So you just cook it down, but it could take a long time to cook it. And I just put this huge pile of bacon with onions on a plate, and I gave it to one of the guys that we were with, and he looked like he was about to cry, and he's like, this is my heart on a plate. It's just like, because it smells so amazing and it tastes just as good. But we did some experiments where human noses can smell that bacon and onions cooking from at least a half a mile away, if not further. So if a human nose can smell it, an animal nose is going to smell it from way farther away. So, so we often do that just because we enjoy it. But I have noticed that the wildlife does tend to come in more when we do that. We get more wildlife all around moving when we cook up the yummy stuff. So so I think that's a good thing to try also. And I've heard people will pour bacon grease, on different different areas around where their research area is, and see if anything comes to it.
Well, In and Outdoor Guy, I just want to say, he asked, sorry I'm late, but what's the best experience you had or interaction? And Melissa talked about that at the beginning of the podcast. So make sure that you go back and watch the beginning, because it was fantastic. Now, Can Squatch asked, You talked about off-roading. Do you have some places in mind where you want to get off the beaten path or backcountry?
Of course.
And
Of course
And
I
she's
do.
not going to tell you.
Of
Come
course I
on,
do.
Cans.
that's coming from an attorney. I don't know if I want him to be my lawyer.
I don't either. Let's incriminate ourselves.
Okay, Buzzards Roost asks, have you been threatened by them? If so, where and what state?
I have never been threatened. Never been threatened. Fortunately, thankfully.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just vetting this. Okay. Our friend Courts Griner, and it's good to see you, Courts, asks Melissa, have you ever tried your vocal singing to attract any of these creatures?
That's my buddy Quartz. I've been squatching with Quartz. Hi, Quartz. Yes, I have. I'm a vocalist also. That's why I think that's why he's asking. But yes, I have, and I have actually had howling response. I always get coyotes. I can call in every coyote around. But I have had some responses that they were too low to get on a recorder, but we felt like that they were a response to some of the stuff that I was doing. The howls mixed with just kind of like operatic singing and stuff.
Yeah.
I know Larry and I, one of the times that we went to Georgia, we had a friend of ours tell us that he sees a lot of orbs there in North Georgia. Have you ever seen orbs in the woods?
I have. The weirdest thing I've ever seen. Yeah, I have. I was with two other people, and we all watched it together. We were halfway up a mountain trail. It was an expedition, and so there were some people down at the trail head, at the trail base, and we were about halfway up the mountain, and we kept seeing this white light. Well, one of the girls I was with, my friend was with me, and she kept seeing this light move back and forth, just kind of, this kind of thing. And she's like, "Is that somebody coming up the trail? Like with a headlight on? Is somebody coming up the trail?" And I said, "I don't think so." When I finally saw it, and so then I thought it was like just a light through the trees, and the trees were swaying. It was a little bit breezy. I thought, okay, that's what we're seeing. And but then it did look like it was moving, and then it was me and my friend, and then another guy that was with us, and so we all three saw it. And then the more we watched it, the more we realized, okay, this is different. It doesn't look like it's attached to a person's head. It doesn't look like a headlight. I'm not sure what this is. So we got one of the guys down at the base to start walking up the trail with a red light on, so we could know that was him, and see if he could see anything, or flush it out, whatever it was, And so as he was walking up the trail, the light started coming towards us up the trail, but it was doing like this. It was just like a gentle side to side kind of thing. And then as he was getting closer to us, it got extremely close to us, and it was hovering on the trail, kind of going back and forth again. And then all of a sudden it just flew off just like that. And we all looked at each other and said, "What was that?" It was weird. So yes, and I've I've since read about and heard about orbs, but that was the first time I had actually experienced one. So I don't know what it was. I don't think it was an alien. I don't I don't know, but it didn't make any sound. It didn't do anything other than just move really slowly and elegantly, and then it just whizzed off. So I don't know. It was kind of weird, but one of those cool things I got to experience in the woods.
Yeah.
I am really fascinated by them. I was on a filming expedition in the Everglades a few months back, and it was a closed down campground, And so I kind of feel like I know why they closed it down because of the activity. But we witnessed what we believe were orbs 2 nights in a row there. And it just, I've heard about them, and me and Larry has gone to look and see if we can find them. But to be able to witness something like that, it's just, it is so strange, to be out there and see, see something like that.
Yeah, we went all the way to North Georgia to see them because that's where our friend was seeing them constantly.
Yeah.
But the 3 days we were there, it stormed 3 days pretty much.
Okay. Robert asked, do you openly carry a firearm? If not, it might be why no aggressive behavior.
I don't open carry, but I do carry. So, and almost everybody I go with is carrying, but usually it's usually concealed. Not many people open carry.
Yeah.
Okay, our lawyer's back.
Uh-oh.
Scott asked, was it a clear ball of light? Could you see anything inside of it?
And then he asked, and where was it at? Oh, he didn't.
It was, I would just describe it as a white ball. It wasn't clear. I couldn't see through it. It just was like a white ball, and it was kind of oval, more oval shaped than super round. Just kind of an ovally shaped and bright and white.
Yeah. One thing that was strange with us, we had a lot of thermals, and we could not capture it on the thermals. But one feller had a night vision and was able to capture it using the night vision. And after we went back and reviewed the film, you can see it was like swirling that was going on on the inside of it, like it was swirling. But we didn't notice that, with the naked eye. It was just really strange. And I see our attorney. We're going to pretend like you didn't ask that. Let me read this one. Okay. BF Bud asked, me and my wife are going Bigfoot hunting around Walton, West Virginia. You know of the area? Do you know of the area or any good suggestions?
I'm not familiar with Walton. I'm not familiar with that area. My suggestion would be to look on the the different Bigfoot databases that are available out there, and just look and see where the sightings are. See if there's any sightings where you're going, and just read those and kind of get a feel for maybe what time of year these things happened and where specifically and who was involved, that kind of thing. That would be my recommendation. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that area.
That is great advice, is to go to the different sighting databases and study them, just look at them in detail and what the people said, what the weather conditions were, what time of the year, what the moon phase was there, and see if, you can find any common denominators. And, but that's great advice, Melissa. Larry, we're almost out of time. Do you have any final questions?
Oh, I think I've asked everything. I think.
Well, we realized that there's been a little buffering tonight. I don't know if it was on the YouTube platform or what, but I believe everything showed up. It may be just the video being a little bit fuzzy. So we want to apologize for that. And we appreciate you so much for coming on, Melissa. And we would just like to give you this opportunity to leave our audience with any final words.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm so excited to be on the show and to talk about Bigfoot. I love telling my stories, and I love talking about Bigfoot. So, just like we've already said, if you're thinking about getting into it, just do it. It's so fun. At the very worst, it's a super fun camping trip. My biggest piece of advice is to go with people that share your excitement for the subject, and it'll be a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And you'll have a really great time. And join up some of the groups that are on Facebook. Facebook groups are a great way to meet people and to learn about things in your area, and have opportunities to hear about expeditions that are not too far away from you. So that's a great way to get started. But I hope everybody that's interested will give it a shot, and I hope to see you in the woods.
Well, that's one thing that I've taken away from tonight's podcast, and it's something that our little group of friends that we go out with is to have fun, enjoy each other's company, and any activity that you might have or anything that you might find, that's just the icing on the cake. But if you're not having fun and enjoying each other out there, then you might want to look for something else, another hobby.
For sure.
Larry, do you have any final words?
I want to thank Melissa for coming on. I've watched you on different stuff for years. I know I've only been actively Bigfooting, 10 years maybe. And I was one of those desk jockeys that watched YouTube and all that. And I can remember a lot of stuff y'all were on and watching it. And I'm glad you're back in it and going to contribute again. Can't wait to see what you run across.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to remind everybody that we will put a link to Bigfoot Chick Adventures at the top of the comment section. So make sure you go to that and tell Melissa hey. And we want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We appreciate the love that's been shown to us with the different people contributing. And we appreciate everyone that comes into the chat room. You are our family, and we love each and every one of y'all. So we will see you again. Same bat time, same bat channel. Night, night, footers. Beast TV would like to welcome all of our new Facebook members. Be sure to check out our pictures and videos of possible evidence. And if you haven't checked out the Files tab, there is a wealth of information that you may find beneficial. If you would like to support Beast TV, check out our gear. We have coffee mugs, face masks, gaiters, shirts, and tank tops. The link is pinned at the top of the comment section. Everything is always marked down 20%. So come check out our junk.
This has been a Sawdust production.